Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
It's
So
nice to meet you.
nice to meet you, Andrei. I will invite you to make a short introduction because you were the first to post about this topic, and I would like to go after you as
Okay,
well to
go
present
after
myself.
me
Yeah.
in the sense of coming after me, or I'm
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We're gonna have a very friendly and constructive conversation. I know that. So my name is Andrei. My initial background is technical, software developer, software architect. In 2008, I got into management, started as a team leader, project manager, delivery unit manager, and other management positions. And in 2015, I started my own company, Intro Specials, where I do leadership and soft skills training and consultancy, mostly for the IT industry. So that's in a way is my bias, if you will, or my area of expertise. So obviously that influences how I look at things, and I'm sure that will come up in our conversation.
Yeah, of course. I'm definitely gonna have my own biases because I have a unique experience as you do. So we'll manage that. My name is Andrei Scurtu. A lot of Andreis today is in this meeting. And the luck makes that I also started debating in 2008. So we have a very important year in our life in 2008. But the time has passed and I evolved into being a trainer, a coach for teams in high schools. Then I started working with teenagers and working with adults, teaching them the debate and use argumentation in their life. And today I have a business called Argumentor, which the sole purpose of it is to help people win time by being better communicators through argumentation in debate, but mostly argumentation because debate is something that I will approach to clarify in the future of this conversation, but we should make a distinction between the two of them. So I'm very happy to be here at your initiative, and I'm happy I made the response video. I think we will invite everybody to see the posts for what prompted this conversation, so so they can have context.
Yes. So I made a short video about why I think the debate mentality, like how I called it, can in some situations be detrimental in companies, in teams, in businesses. And you made a response to that video with counter arguments about how it helps. Thank you so much for that response. I found it a very professional and good response, and that's the trigger to us having this conversation today. So I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation, not necessarily to decide who's the winner, but to just explore the topic, because in the real world, things are complicated and some things are useful in some situations, not useful in other situations. So I'll just hope to share ideas and experiences and come out with something new.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because even if I'm a debater, I am not here to prove that debate mentality is being all about winning. I'm here to have a productive conversation as well and try to understand better your point of view because you have the experience as a trainer for leadership teams. So I'm very, very curious about your insights on the topic. Yeah, I was thinking maybe it would be, I will also make a short presentation of what was my response. I was trying to, I've seen your video and I understand your position, but I thought that it was an inaccurate picture of what can debate done for some businesses. So I tried to clarify that because can be a useful tool to take decisions and save time in a company in the right context. So that prompted my response, and that was my response. And I think it would be a good idea for now to clarify what debate is,
Okay.
because debates take many forms, and in corporations, most likely they take. And here I will love your input. In corporations, most of the time, debates take an informal style. Let's say it's more free form. Everybody's trying to argue about their point, but there is not necessarily a proper context for the debate to take place. So the main drawback of this is that debates can take a very long time and people do not understand when is the time to stop and draw a conclusion or reach a decision, find a solution for the problem they have. In formal debates that I'm used to it, you have a very restrictive time frame. You have a moderator, you have a judge, you have persons that assure that the context of the debate is fair for everybody and everybody has the same amount of time to present their ideas. So that's something that I don't think is necessarily feasible in corporations. But if a corporation or a business would be to adopt debate as a tool internally, they have to pay attention, trying to be fair with all the parties involved in the conversation, because frustrations can cause problems and make people try to be more competitive and try to win harder, as you were saying in your video and something like that. So I think it's important to make that distinction about debate. And obviously, debate has a long tradition. It's very rich as an art form, let's say. But there is no point in going all the details now, I guess. So how do you see debates happening in business?
So I think the clarification is important, because the word debate can be used in two ways. One way is to use it in a very general sense, and a lot of people say, "Oh, we debated this or we debated that," but they don't mean anything specific. They just mean we discussed it. We had some arguments. We had a conversation about it. Maybe we didn't agree, or we agreed partially. And the other sense of the word is, like you said, quite specific, like two people arguing a position, or two teams arguing a position, one for, one against, with a winner, and in some forms even with points and judges and scoring and things like that.
Yeah.
So when we use the word in the very general sense, like debating things with people, it's very hard to say if I'm for or against it, because it's such a loose definition. Of course, I'm for people discussing things and debating things in the general sense. What I referred to in my video was basically two things that concern me in some situations, which is the idea of a fixed problem, fixed predefined problem. The topic of conversation is, in a debate mentality, that's why I call debate mentality, it's assumed to be known, and we just need to decide if it's good or not, so to say. Yeah. And the other thing that concerned me was sort of this adversarial system where we have one or two or more, let's say, entities, be it people or teams, and they have different proposals or different opinions about it, or different arguments or different positions, and one of them is going to win. And I think that's in some situations too simplistic, and in some situations restrictive, and in some situations can lead to bad behaviors and bad culture. So that's kind of the groundwork of my thinking. So when I talked in my video about debating in companies, I was concerned about those kinds of things. Let me just get out of the way the things I think I'm almost sure we will agree with. I totally agree with you that the ability to critically analyze the thing is absolutely essential. The ability and the willingness of the other party to criticize an idea or proposal, to find flaws, the necessity to discuss when we have different opinions, to discuss about different ways of doing things, to be assertive, absolutely essential. So those kinds of things, I don't think we'll have a debate about. I think we both agree they're essential. So that's kind of the starting point for me, but I don't want to talk too much before you also say something, so we progress in a good way.
I believe there are many layers of this conversation, so I'll try to break down a few of them. I'll start with the end. First, we have to see in which area of the organization that the conversations takes place. For example, if it is a conversation between a team at the team level, if it's a conversation between team and management, if it's a conversation between the team of managers, because, for example, many times a manager has to impose a decision on the team. The team has no saying on it, so the debating about it, it's useless, and it only produces more frustration for the team. So there comes the ability of the leader to explain the decision taken by the business and how it would benefit the team, or how the team has to manage it. On the other hand, there might be some decisions that need to be contested. Even so, they are imposed by the business. You as a team member, or a starting C-level member, or the lowest C-level possible, you have to be able to try to contest that position, because it's detrimental for your team. So if you do not have that critical thinking, those abilities, and the capacity to present your point of view in a persuasive manner, you might be losing opportunity to save your team from a bad decision, because from the top of the organization, most of the time they do not see exactly what's happening at the team level. So it's important to make this differentiation, because debate can be useful at some levels. I would encourage debating more at the upper levels of the organization, because this is a somehow counter attitude, let's say, a counterculture to politics in companies. And I think you know about that. Everybody
that's
has
one of my
agenda.
biggest enemies as well.
Everybody has an agenda. Nobody knows what other person's agenda is, and you're trying to navigate that corporate political environment to make the best for your teams and for your division or whatever. So maybe we should be more transparent, more persuasive, more critical with the decisions of others, trying to understand their motivations, what's happening, why are taking some decision in a certain way, and so on. So that's an important thing to do, I believe, to distinct between where in the organization would be the best to have a conversation debate, like, let's say. And another topic, the other idea that I had is like, you as a team, you have to be able to understand, to present your points, to be embedded in the debate culture. So you know that even if you present your points, you might not be right, and you might not have a decision taken in your favor. So debate teaches you that, because if you debate multiple times, you know that sometimes you lose, and it's okay to lose because some other person had better arguments, and people get humbled by practicing debate, even people with great egos. So maybe on the other side, it would be interesting to see people practicing debate just because they would get the opportunity to be humbled and say, okay, I was wrong this time, or maybe I wasn't having the best argument. So there are many layers of the conversation. I think I went on a couple of tangents here, but I would like to hear your input.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let you know, I'm taking notes as you say things, because I want to remember. You're making it very hard for me to disagree with you, because I agree with probably 99% of what you said, but I'll come with my points. Also, I absolutely agree with you. And I totally believe in this kind of culture in a company where we're honest with each other, and we're not afraid to say things to each other, even to people in higher positions of power. And feedback is direct and honest. And I think that's essentially, if you don't do that, like you said, politics take over and everything goes to hell. And the ability for people to stand up for their opinions and say things and be assertive, I'm 150% with that. My points were more specific in a way. So, for example, let me take an example, right? There's a decision to be made. I'm just coming up with an example. If there's a new project coming from the client. We have an existing client and they want us to do an additional thing. And we have a decision to make. Do we hire a new team for this new project, or do we give the work to the existing team that's already working for that client? When I say debate mentality, and the thing that I think sometimes can lead to bad results is you look at it in a very rigid way. Like we have option 1 and option 2. Hire a new team or give it to the existing team. And we have one person arguing for this, or a group of people, and one person arguing for this. And the boss is kind of sort of sitting here and listening to these guys and listening to those guys, maybe asking some questions, and then, okay, we'll do this one, right? The problem with this, and I agree with you that this is good exercise, and the ability of those people to gather the information, to make their case, to present their case, all these are good skills. So I'm not denying there's a learning opportunity there. But where this doesn't really work for me is, and again, this is my bias, my experience from what I've seen, maybe in other industries, in other places, it's different. Decisions are rarely that clear. Like we have option 1 and option 2. They're emergent decisions. So things start out like the client wants a bit more work from us. Initially, we don't even know if it's a different project or not. Then things grow a little bit. Then they stop a little bit, and they grow a little bit some more. And at some point, you end up that maybe we should start a new project with this piece of work. And if you try to limit yourself to some fixed options, you're missing other things. Maybe the solution is not to hire a new team, not give it to the existing team. Maybe we should work with a contractor. Maybe we should outsource it. Maybe we should hire part of a team. Maybe we should delay the new project a little bit until another team finishes another piece of work and they become available. So those kinds of alternative approaches, so to say, get excluded when you get very strict about option A and option B. I know that in companies, very rarely it's strictly like option A and option B, but sometimes it's more like that than in other times. So I think if you have more people sort of, if one says option A and one says option B, if they're very, okay, I need to prove my point, they're going to miss other options. And that is one of my concerns. And I understand it's not an absolute concern, and with a good leader, you can work around it, but it was one of my concerns.
So I totally get your point of view, and I understand where it comes from, but and it's valid. It's that can be a problem. But again, there are many layers to this conversation as well. We can talk about the mentality of the persons engaged of the employees engaged in the conversation, and if they have something to prove, they are trying to show that they are the best in the team or something like that. They will try to impose their ego and their point of view on the others, and that's a problem. Another thing you said, it's very interesting. Most of the times that's definitely true. There's not going to be a clear problem with two solutions. Let's pick one of the two solutions. Let's debate about it. It's going to be more like we have some more work from the client. Exactly as you said, we have this problem. This is
or this problem, maybe not be maybe this opportunity. Just to
we
be
have
fair.
a problem of
more work from the client is good.
Yeah. Just a quick parenthesis here. Yeah, no, it's a great point because it's prompted an idea.
Problem is like a technical term. Yeah.
Yeah. In debate, you have two teams. One usually try to change the status quo, try to change the situation we are in. The pro team, the team that proposes a change, has to prove why we need to change something. And usually the other team is in the favor of preserving the status quo, not changing anything. Like now is the best solution we have. So in that context, we have to think that there are always going to be persons in a conversation that will try to preserve the status quo and not change anything because it's comfortable. And we know that many employees are looking for the comfort of their job. And this is a challenge for leaders all day in all organizations. And there are other disruptive members that will try to change everything all the time, which can be good, but you cannot be too disruptive without putting the team stability or the project stability in question. So from this point of view, we don't have to limit ourselves. It's about framing how we put the problem in front of the team. We say or the opportunity in front of the team. Yeah, we do not say you have to pick between A and B. Let's talk about it. We will ask directly the team, what would you think would be the best solution for this? And everybody will think on their own. And if you have 5 members in the team, you might have 5 solutions. And then if all 5 solutions sounds relatively well, how do you decide which is the better solution? Most of the time, the leader goes back, talks with the other members of the leadership teams, and come back with a response. But they are not taking the time necessary to understand deeply the point of view of each employee. What are the benefits and disadvantages? So I understand your situation, but maybe we should train the leaders to frame different the problem in an organization, so they do not put the employees in the situation that they have to create 2 teams to combat each other for 2 solutions. Be more open. But it's still a debate exercise in the end from my point of view, because you have to argument your point of view, but it's not 2 points of view, it's 5 points of view or something like that.
Or a mixture of all the 5 points of view, or 3 of them, or 2 of them, or a combination of some sort.
Exactly.
So again, you're making it very hard for me to disagree with you because I agree with what you're saying. So maybe it's again going back to the assumptions and the terms I had in my head when I said what I said. When I said, and I agree, framing is essential. And my concern was that when I said debate mentality, I meant about the framing of option A versus option B.
Yeah.
So when you put people in that frame, like we have a very clear problem definition, you just need to figure out if this is the best way to do it or this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
You're limiting their imagination because you're just giving them a very strict assignment, so to say. Sometimes you want this. I'm not disagreeing that in some situations, you don't want to think outside of the box. Yeah. You've thought enough outside of the box, whatever. But I think in many situations, probably most situations, again, in my experience, people have different experiences. I don't know everything, I only know what I've seen. Most of the times it's not that simple. And if you put people in that frame, you're limiting the quality of the ideas that might come out of it. That's what I had in my mind when I said in my video that the debate mentality can be limiting. But as you explain it now, I'm beginning to agree with you.
I have to intervene here because what I've presented to you is like somehow an ideal situation in each member of the team, and the leaders understand how to properly manage the conversation debate. Like But in reality, what happens is exactly what they are describing. Let's make an analogy that is not going to be pretty, and I will apologize for that. Let's say that the team is like a pack of wolves, and there's going to be an alpha wolf most likely, and it's going to impose the point of view all the time. And maybe from time to time, a beta will try to become an alpha. And the challenge will most likely be happening between two sides, because the other team will going to go silent and wait for the outcome. So if you have proper training as a leader, you'll know that you'll have to encourage the more silent and less assertive members of your team to speak up and bring their input, because most of the time, and I'm not trying to generalize, but the silent team members, they're mostly the most observant, and they can see a solution that nobody else is seeing. So it's true, I presented a general and an ideal situation, but most likely in reality it's happening what you're describing. So that's why I see the value of training leaders in debate, because they will know to give the opportunity to everybody, will know to evaluate the ideas of everybody, will know how to try to stay fair against all the proposals or the solutions brought to the table. So yeah, you're right, but there are caveats to the conversation. I was trying to get back to mentality, because you repeated this multiple times, and you also said it in the debate. From my point of view, it's very important in an organization to separate the mentality, the closed mindset, as you described, not a learning mindset, from the skill set. Because if a person has a closed mindset, you can have the skill set of debate and argumentation, and will use it for malicious ways. That's true. You'll try to preserve the status quo, most likely. We don't have to change. Everything is working great. Let's not do anything that is not reasonable, etc., etc. And he's going to become a bully. But if you have an open mentality, you are willing to listen as a person. Yeah, you individually, or the organization encourages employees to be like that. If you add a layer of debate, I don't think it's going to be as problematic. So I'm trying to separate mentality, closed mentality, from debate. I understand why it's easy to conflate them, because usually people who practice debate are becoming competitive. And if the organization is competitive, they will be mega competitive, which is bad.
That's my second point. But for now, I'm just focusing on the limiting the problem space aspect of it, which sometimes is beneficial. You want to limit the problem space. Sometimes that's what you want to do. But again, just to agree with you on the fact that leaders need to be very careful about how to give a voice to everyone in the team, and don't let the people who naturally dominate the conversations because they're more experienced, more assertive, less shy, whatever, and they always speak first, and they even if they have good opinions, even if they're well intended, you want to hear other people as well. And I also talk with many leaders about that, and I talk about many ways of doing that. You mentioned debate as one way of doing that, and I see how, because if you have a debate and you say, okay, now you have 5 minutes to talk about this, and now you have 5 minutes to say your opinion, you're giving equal time to both people, and that's one way to hear both people. And that's just one of them. So I agree with that. I usually do it differently, but I get your point.
I'm just presenting an alternative to the way other people are trying to solve this problem of lack of leadership in the business.
Point. So again, I agree with most of what you're saying, and I expected that, because when you do a 3-minute video and you respond in a 3-minute video, but when you talk to people usually have more sophisticated views. So my concern was, let me just say what I had in mind. When I say debate mentality, I was thinking of, to give you a very simple example, we decide where we want to go for lunch, and we put 2 options on the table. Do you want to have pizza, or do you want to have burgers? And you argue for burgers, and I argue for pizza. If we frame it like this, it's very unlikely that any of us is going to say, let's have Chinese. And sometimes Chinese is the best option. That was very simply my point. Now I understand your points, and I understand that with a good leader that knows how to manage things and compensate for things and have some debate, and then also have some other kind of conversation. If you're a good leader, you can manage anything. So I'm not contradicting that. That was my concern, and I agree with you that it's not a universal concern. It can be managed. Sometimes you can use debate to good effects. That was why I said that, and I think you need to be careful about that. As a leader, you need to be careful about that. If you organize a debate, with two fixed options. Be aware that if you do that frequently, you're going to unwillingly train your people to think like that and only like that. If you do it wisely and you also do other things, of course, it can be an awesome instrument, I think.
I was trying to explain to a friend of mine why debate is just a couple of days ago, because it's a topic that invades my life all the time. And he was very against the idea of debate, because he was saying, not against, he was like, debate for me doesn't do anything. I do not need debate. Why should I purchase argumentation trainings, or how would that help me? Because I'm already a good speaker. I already know how to prove my points, etc., etc. And deep in the conversation, I realized this a thing. People are having superficial conversations, like in this frame of having just two options, for example, which is less than ideal. I present an option. I say, if I've talked for 5 minutes, this is my idea. It's a great idea. Let's have it. And the other person says, no, I have another idea. This is the best idea. Let's have this idea. But in reality, having the debating skills and argumentation skills will encourage you to do much more than that, than presenting a point of view. Will encourage you to listen what's the other person saying, responding to that, to that person, engaging with the point of view that that person brought. For example, that if I was in the team, I want burgers, I would ask, but you know, that pizza place has only 3 stars. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that? So I will try to engage with that content to provoke the person to improve their points, or help me better understand the point of view of that person. So if you go to the next layer of the debate, let's say debate, and go beyond presenting points of view, and you engage with the content, you listen to the content, you respond, you put the appropriate questions at the appropriate times, you can better explore the topic. And sadly, it's true. What you are seeing in organizations that are having debate-like conversation are limited to, I'm presenting my point of view, you are presenting your point of view, and we'll take a decision now, which is not enough to have a real conversation, a real debate-like conversation from my point of view. You have to go bigger than that. And the point is, for example, you are arguing for something and I'm against. It's not enough to bring a point of view that sustains my position. I also have to show why you are wrong. I have to talk about your content, why your point of view is not valid. And if you start doing that exercise, you might realize speaking that he's right, because you're trying to reprocess all the information in your head and ask questions about it, and etc., etc.
To me, that's I understand what you're saying, and I understand how that develops your thinking skills and your critical thinking skills and your argumentation skills. But it's also a bit of a concern in the sense that when you focus too much on what the other guy is saying, you're not focusing on the problem that needs to be fixed. So if we go back to that example of, do we hire a new team or do we give it to the existing team? If I'm thinking about what you're proposing and what I'm proposing, I'm not thinking about what the client needs in a way. Well, I'm exaggerating, of course, because the things should be connected.
But I understand.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you said this and you said that, and this is not logical, and this is not completely proven, and this is just a correlation, but it's not a causality. Correct. Well done. But what we're actually trying to do here, I'm not trying to, we're actually trying to solve the problem from the client and understand the problem. So again, I think that's a danger. I don't think it happens all the time. I think you can do debates well. I don't think it has to happen, but I think it's a thing you should be worried about, concerned about, aware about as a leader. That was what I was thinking of. And I understand I totally relate with what you're saying with actually listening to the other person. And I remember many people that I used to work with were consult that go into a meeting and they don't actually listen. They just wait for their turn, sort of. So we've learned not to interrupt each other. We did that most of the times. Okay, we've learned that. But we don't actually listen to the other guy. As the other guy is talking, you're just thinking, okay, he said that, but my point is better. I can't wait to say that. And he proposed that, but he missed that thing, and I considered that thing. And you're just preparing your arguments. And I know in debate you don't have to do that. And I know that the people that do debate professionally are very good at being very rational and not taking things personally and not having, ad hominem things and not getting into, all kind of cognitive biases. most people are not that good at that. So,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah, exactly. So exactly in this situation as you're presenting it, it's very important for you to, if you are opposing an idea, to do both. You have to present your own idea, why you think on your own that the solution proposed is a bad idea, and then also engage with the content. And there are those risks here. You have in the first, I think it's more likely to have the first situation in which I prepare from previously from the meeting, before the meeting, I prepare an argument. I'm waiting for my turn. I'm going to present my argument and that's it. Or I just listen to the other person and I literally critique and dismantle all the ideas of that person, and that's it. But no, you cannot have one without the other and have a productive conversation. You have to have both, so it's going to be engaging. And you, if you do not do that, if you do not do the second part, engaging with the other point of view, you just have a public speaking competition.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
which is something else. It's fun, but it's something else.
Yeah, it's different animal. Yeah.
How I struggle with this myself, of course, a lot, and because by nature I'm a very argumentative kind of individual. I don't have a debate history, but I'm the kind of individual that likes to speak up. I'm not shy, so I always feel like we could improve something, or I could criticize something or make it better. So I have to learn to chill.
Yeah.
That has been one of the hardest things for me to learn. And one thing I used to do when I was leader of a certain team is I would speak the last, and I would try, when I get into a meeting, I had an idea. Obviously, we're talking about a certain thing, more or less well-defined. It's inevitable that you have some ideas about what you think is the right solution. Maybe you're not 100% sure, but you have some ideas. But I was trying really hard to forget those ideas. So I get into a meeting and I'm like, when someone is talking, I'm like, mentally and sometimes even physically, I would go on their side of the table and be like their supporter. Okay, I want your idea to succeed. How can I help make your proposal the best? And I was trying to forget what I had in mind. Like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? Maybe you can do this. And for me, it was like a win-win. If that person's idea was better than mine, awesome. I have a great team member. I have someone I can rely on. They can do the job. I don't need to do the job. Everybody wins. If it's not, they still learn something. And I'll apply my idea in the end, and it's still okay. Yeah, it's a very nice conversation we're having. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I hope you are enjoying it as much as I do. It's really great. I'm really happy we're talking about debate in public space, because it's a controversial topic, as we can see, and I think we can shed light and give the people opportunity to take a decision if it's good or not for them at the individual level or at the business level, and so on. So yeah, I love this example you gave earlier with how you manage the team and what we're doing there. And I think it's really important to do that for the team. You are trying to coach them, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. You are working with them. So, but that means you had the time to do that. And from my point of view, sometimes in some organizations that are super active, super fast moving, have a very fast pace, you do not have time to do that. So maybe you can bring an external trainer, train them in debate, have them talk about a topic 3 minutes, not 15, because they know how to pinpoint the most important ideas. You'll have you win much more time in that meeting, and you still have to do the coaching. But I believe mixing the coaching with the decision taking can be dangerous. Coaching in a business, from my point of view, and I invite you to correct me and give extra ideas, is about letting people from time to time to make mistakes so they can learn from them. And maybe you cannot afford to do that. So I would have the decision-making process very clear and very, not necessarily formal, but in a organized way. Yeah. We present the ideas in a couple of minutes. We talk about, we respond the ideas, and we move forward, and then have feedback or coaching after it, or in another session, one-to-one. Look, I've seen your point there in that meeting. Maybe you should do this and you approach this in a certain way, etc., etc. What I'm trying to point out here is that debate is a tool that can be used to make organizations more time efficient. But we don't have to not to coach teams. That I'm not saying that it's important to coach teams, but you have to have separate moments for decision making and coaching. From my point of view.
So I agree with you in principle, but in my opinion, I don't think it's that separate or clear.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I also think, and I'll explain. I also think that leaders want to be too efficient in how they make decisions, make a big mistake. I think it's easy to say that I've wasted, quote unquote, 10 minutes talking about something when I could have decided in 2 minutes. Of course, sometimes you can talk endlessly without reason about things. I'm not, and many leaders don't know how to make decisions, and many teams don't know how to make decisions, and they end up going in circles. But the other extreme is bad as well, because it's not waste. That's coaching, that's teaching, that's growing your team. Maybe you have the experience to make the decision in 2 minutes, but they don't, and they're going to look at you and like, what did he do? What did he or she decide that? But if you take the 10 minutes to sort of go through the process and speak your mind and listen to more people and do things like that, which are not necessarily required to make a decision, but they're a great teaching instrument for the team, that's going to help them grow. And I'm usually more concerned about the quality of decisions than the efficiency of decisions. Although I'm not a perfectionist, I'm not saying you should spend like a month making the perfect decision. I think you should decide quickly. But I think efficiency of conversation is, when it comes to a leader, I'm not that sold on that, within reasons. Yeah. One important thing which might not be clear is that when I made the video, I was talking about the dangers of a debate mentality if you as a leader apply it in your team, in your organization a lot, at the day-to-day job a lot. The value of learning debate as a learning thing, as a training, so to say, as a teaching tool, I don't think I have anything against that. I think it teaches you a lot of great things. My concern comes when every meeting you have, every decision you're trying to make, or most of them, or many of them, you're organizing as a debate. I think that's where problems begin. But as a teaching tool that teaches you some very important skills, I don't think I can say anything against that.
If you have a leader with a great ego, who is outspoken and is very assertive, if you also teach him debate, you can create a tyrant very easily. So it's a problem, and I agree that. But that's I was hinting to that in the conversation, in the video I did. It's very important to look at the company culture. How is the company hiring and appointing leaders? Because mostly there are two big types of companies. They are promoting the specialist from the team as a leader, first level leader, first level team leader, let's say like that. And if he or she also has soft skills, maybe it can go upper in the organization and other skills. And there are other organizations that are trying very hard to appoint the right people as a leaders for the right teams, even so that the team leader doesn't have the technical skills of that team. So if you have a technical leader that also knows really well the job, and you also train him in debate, and he's also outspoken with a great ego, I know everything, I have the solution, I'm the most senior person here, it's going to be problematic. And I understand your point of view really clearly. But I'm looking also for any leader of any team. And I want to ask you, when you are a team leader in an IT company, how many hours a day were you spending in meetings?
Depends. I mean, it varied a lot across times, and most of those meetings that I did spend as a team leader, project manager, were project meetings. But at my last job, which was delivery manager, so I was in charge of a business unit of 300 and something people. I think I spent 90% of my time in meetings.
Exactly. That's my point.
Formal, less formal, but that was my job, basically. Informal conversations, one-to-one conversations, conversations with more people, conversation with people from my unit, with other units. So that was the job.
My belief, my theory is just a theory, it's not something that I've seen implemented in any business before, is that if you have a debate-trained organization, or not even debate, let's say argumentation, everybody knows how to briefly present a point, prepare for a conversation, make a point, ask questions, listen to the other party involved in the conversation. If you have most of the people, at least in the leadership, let's say, trained to think this way and try to not waste time talking about irrelevant stuff for the conversation, you would be able to reduce that 90% time of meetings to 70% or 60% even, or
No,
let's
there
say
will be more
50%.
meetings that take the place. But I get your point, and
Yes,
I'm all with
but
you,
it's
brother,
better
on
to
this
have
one.
more meetings. Yeah, it's
Of
better to
course,
have
yeah.
like, okay, you'll still have 90% of the time meetings, but you'll have instead of 20, you'll have 30 meetings,
Yeah.
and you can do more in the less time. You're still winning time.
Again, I
That's
absolutely agree
my
with you
belief.
on that.
I'm really trying to find an organization, train it to work this way. Not doesn't matter how big or small, and prove that this is working, because I believe everybody wants to win time. Yeah, even if you have more meetings, or you do not overtime, you do not work overtime, or you can find other ways. You get better compensated because you are more productive and you can do more in less time, etc., etc. So I'm curious about this.
Yeah, so I'll share my point briefly, and then I'll move to my next point, because I don't want to take too much time on one thing. But
yeah,
I agree with the fact that meetings can be inefficient. Too many participants, no clear topic. What are you trying to solve here? So people just talk about whatever, and they argue about whatever, and it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, that's a big problem. That needs to be fixed, and it's a big focus, I think, of any good leader, manager, to fix that through a multitude of tools. Like, from the basics, like having an agenda for the meeting, and having a certain structure for the meeting, not necessarily too formal, but maybe just a little bit. Making meetings smaller, because shorter, if with your people, just the people that need to be there. Don't invite everyone just for the sake of it, and many others, including the ability to structure an argument and ask good questions and employ critical thinking, and the ability to listen, and the ability to empathize, and the ability to be assertive, and 15 other things. So I totally agree with that. I also think that but the flip side of the coin, sometimes, there's an expression which is penny wise, pound foolish. Which is, some people are very careful with some things that are not that important, that they're not careful with the things that matter. There's many things that waste our time in a company, especially in a large company. The larger the company, the more bureaucracy and stuff. Spending a bit more time growing your people is not one of the things that wastes your time. And sometimes I think you need to have, quote unquote, inefficient conversations, because it's the best teaching tool I know of. When we meet together as a team and we're trying to figure something out, the way we figure that out, from understanding the problem, defining the problem, understanding what we're trying to solve here, what's really happening, gathering data, and so on and so on. It's the best way to teach the team, I think, how to deal with things. And sometimes you take it slower, inefficiently, because it's a great teaching tool. But I get your point. And just to briefly say my second point, before I let you speak again. So my first concern was which we talked about for almost an hour, which I talked about for almost an hour from different angles, was this framing problem. The framing problem. If you frame the situation like we have option 1 and option 2, and you argue for this and you argue for that, you're telling people, you're pushing people not to think about other options. And I approached that from many angles. Let's put it to the side. My next problem is, I think this is only the bigger problem, and debate is not the cause of this problem. Debate is just part of the picture. I think the biggest danger to any company culture, especially as a company grows, is the principal agent problem, the us versus them mentality. Like, we, the developers, wrote good code, but the testers didn't test it. The testers say, "Oh, we tested it, but it gave it to us too late." And, "Oh, but the client didn't give us the requirements." Or, "The sales guy sold another project we cannot deliver." "Oh, but our colleagues from Cluj or from Bucharest or from Iași or whoever, they're..." And it's always very, very easy. And I think it's human nature to, like, it's us and we did our job and the other guy didn't do his job. and that happens all the time. And I think a good leader needs to actively fight against it day by day by day by day in many ways. And that was a big part of my job. And one of the ways in which you fight against this is by telling people, okay, let's listen. Let's not rush to conclusions. Let's understand their point of view. Let's empathize with them. Let's not get into a conversation if we have a problem, and we have a problem with the project, right? It's late and the client is unhappy. And we have a meeting about what needs to be done. And if you go into that meeting just prepared to argue your case and basically prove that it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault, everybody's going to be like, defending their own department and defending their own team and defending. oh, we did the best we could, but we didn't get this and we didn't get that. And the other guy's like, oh, we did the best we could, but we didn't. You're not getting anywhere. So again, the debate mentality, quote unquote, for me is like when one person has to be right.
Yeah.
It's dangerous from this point of view. But that was what I was referring to. Obviously, it doesn't have to be like that, and there's many nuances. But that was my second point, so to say. Yeah, to get to a real collaboration, which is like, yeah, people, we made some mistakes, you made some mistakes, let's work together, let's fix that. It requires a different mindset, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And I totally agree that it's a problem of mindset and it's a problem of company culture, because I don't know if this is necessarily specific to Romanian culture, but I think it's more pronounced. We are more affected by this factor that we are not willing to admit when we're wrong. And being wrong is really bad in a company in Romania. It's like, if you admit you're wrong, you're basically unemployed already. Yeah, you cannot be wrong never. And
We're
as a
never
leader,
wrong.
you're never wrong. Yeah. And if a company tolerates this kind of behavior and do not teach the leaders of the organization, it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to make mistakes. They take the responsibility for the problem you have created. It's not a problem. If you solve it, it's going to be okay, but take responsibility for it. That can solve a problem. And I can see how confrontation in corporation can be aggravated by having debate like conversations. But I don't know. Sincerely, I don't have a solution for that. I think it's a problem of culture, and the company should steer the organization in direction like be more tolerant with the other persons and with the other teams and try to understand. But for example, if it would be to have like a confrontation like conversation between two departments, developers and testers, testers didn't test something and it was a problem, some accusing the tester will accuse the procedure, we were not instructed to do that, etc., etc. But if you put the both parties at the table and you encourage them to listen to each other, yeah, not present arguments. Let's not go there and present arguments. You as a leader, let's say, let's go listen to each other. Let's see what we can learn from them, and we see how can we prevent. It might be something as simple as, I don't know, print screening something before sending it to the testers, and testers just doing a follow-up email on the topic and something. Solution can be very simple, but you have to listen to understand that, and you also point in that. But yeah, if you are stuck at the first level of debating, just making your point, and you do not go beyond that and listening, trying to understand, ask the right questions, you're going to have problematic meetings moving forward. So I don't see a clear solution for that, but I still believe that debate can be a solution. But it's really hard to I don't know, train an organization with 600, 1,000 people. Everybody have the same level of skills and the same level of understanding, and see, okay, he's not attacking me, he's attacking my idea. Maybe I should reconsider it. I will take some time. So I agree with you, but I still did believe that debate is the solution.
In a way, you said what I'm saying or what I'm thinking. I didn't say that. In the sense that in this situation, for me, a debate-like mentality, as I understood it in my initial video, more simplistically, more briefly, now we're talking in more nuances, was like, if we have a problem, we get the test lead, we get the dev lead. I'm the big boss manager. The test lead says, what we did, what we didn't do, why we're right. Okay, now the dev lead says, blah, 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 what he didn't do, what he did, why it's right, how we did it. And I just sit there and I say, okay, this is the right answer. Well, this is what I'm going to do. And obviously in this situation, that is only going to encourage that bad behavior of us versus them and lack of collaboration. And the example you gave, let's put them on the same table and tell them to come up together with a solution, is exactly what I meant, that this is not a moment to have a debate. This is a moment to work together.
Yeah.
But obviously, and I've said this, I think 5 times, but I just want to say it just so it's clear to everyone that I'm not saying that having debate skills and practicing debate and understanding how to debate something is bad for anyone. Go ahead.
I just need 1 second, because I think would be better for us if we do not talk about debate and we talk about argumentation, because this is the focus I'm having in let's say debate like conversations can be problematic sometimes, but being able to argument and present arguments and counter arguments and asking question is a tool set that you should have and a skill you should have. So maybe this is merely clear. Debates can be problematic, but you as an individual having the capacity to argument, it's better. That's why we are focusing in our business in argumentation and not in debate. We don't go to businesses to teach them how to debate. We teach them how to use arguments, how to think of them, how to present them, and how to respond to them.
And from what I've seen on your website, I think that's a great business, just obviously to make it clear for anyone if it's not obvious. It's not like we're talking against each other's businesses.
No, obviously
we're
not.
We're just talking about a specific abstract point.
Yeah.
I think argumentation is great. I think the ability to listen is great. Active listening, empathy, some emotional intelligence to also understand when there's emotion involved. Sometimes you have to deal with that in a bit of different way. And the ability to assertively lay out your points. Yeah, I think that's absolutely essential. And again, it's very hard to disagree with you. Where I would not necessarily disagree with you, because you may agree with this, but just add something, is that sometimes people, I think, focus too much on arguments. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of decisions, even technical decisions to some degree, arguments only take you so far. And this is what I mean. You have, let's say we need to figure something out. And through argumentation like conversation, fact-finding, data finding, analyzing options, scenarios, you eliminate obviously bad options, and you usually are left with 2-3 good options. And you end up in a phase of diminishing returns. I mean, you can argue about them and argue about them and argue about them, and the differences between the options are very small, and you can argue forever. And there comes a point where you need to stop arguing. And basically it becomes not necessarily a negotiation, but becomes a different kind of commitment. Like, we're done trying to prove which one is the best. We just need to decide that we are all going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if initially you supported the other option. Now we're all going to do this thing. Somehow we have to decide that without arguments, because arguments don't work anymore. Because most decisions, even in technical fields, are not fully mathematically provable. That's enough uncertainty, and there's enough ambiguity that you cannot mathematically prove to me, no matter how smart you are, no matter how well you research, that this is provably the best solution, right? Sometimes you just have to say, okay, let's go with something. So that's the only thing I would say, that this argument thing, you have to know when to stop. And also, I've seen many people, but that's not the problem with the argument itself. It's a problem with human nature, which are very stubborn, they don't listen to anything, and their excuse to themselves is, I have arguments. Prove it to me that they're wrong. But their arguments are circular. Those persons in the right way.
Those persons needs to be humbled, and they can only be humbled by a person with a lot of argumentation experience that can point out to them, that's not an argument, that's not a valid example, that's not a rational explanation, that's a bias you have, etc., etc.
Many conversations like,
and no, the idea was like, if you have a person like that, you can only make the team work if you constantly in private, not publicly, explain to that person why it's wrong. And if that person still doesn't agree with you and doesn't find logic, even if they claim they are argumentative, maybe it's not a good fit for the team. So you have to solve problems other way.
I've seen I've seen many people, not many, but enough people like this, and I've in my teams and in other teams, and when I was a team leader or manager in my consulting work, some of them are, you can get through to them. Some of them like it so much, it's like that joke, what's it, after 2 hours of mud wrestling with a pig, you realize that you're tired and the pig likes it. And I don't want to offend anyone, because I absolutely love pigs. But it's but they love that kind of conversation. And at some point it gets to, it doesn't even matter who's right, man. Like, it doesn't matter who's right. This is not getting us anywhere. My job is not to spend so much time trying to convince you of anything. Right? We're here to do a job, or to do something together. If it's so difficult to convince you of anything, it's not worth doing it at some point. So there's a fine line there.
The biggest problem that we have in this situation is that person most likely is a very high performing individual in the company. And if you can dissociate the two of them, you can solve the problem, because you can say, I know you are a high performing, you are very skilled, you have all the talents necessary to do the job, but you are a bad fit for the team. And you have to, as a leader, take a decision then. Do you want to compromise the integrity of the team for the result? Or you say, I prefer a less skilled engineer or less skilled person, but a person that has a right fit for the team. So that's a bigger problem actually than we can solve right now.
So I mean, my opinion is very clear on that. When you have someone, but again, now I'm not talking about overreacting. I'm not talking that they had a bad day. I'm talking about a consistent pattern of exaggerated stubbornness beyond reason. you don't want those people in the team,
Yes.
no matter how good they are. It's just they're not going to help the team. I've seen that case, and it's like nothing grows around them. They kill any ideas. They don't encourage anything. They don't support anything. And not from you, the boss, because you're the boss. You know, it's your job to take it from anyone in the team, from more junior colleagues. And that's one, you know, mention I want to make about arguments. I'm all for logical thinking, fact-based thinking, reality-driven thinking, rational conversation, but at some point you're splitting hairs, and you just have to stop and say, okay, flip a coin, even whatever. We just need to do something. Right?
And here comes your job, I would say. You have to prepare that leader to be able to say, we have enough arguments, we had enough conversation, we should stop here. I have enough information to take a decision. There's no point in moving forward. And yeah, it's something I cannot control. I can teach people, a person, to be argumentative, to create arguments, good arguments, but I do not know how to teach them to stop. They have to be reasonable, and a leader should be able to explain like, for example, if you set the frame up from the beginning, we'll present some argument, and then we'll talk freely about the topics for 15 minutes, and after that I will take a decision. Everybody knows what to expect, and maybe the conversation will not go too far along, wasting time for everybody. So there are inherent problems with this the debating approach, but all of them can be managed if you are reasonable as a person, I would believe.
Yes, absolutely. So two things I want to say. First is, I think that these problems that I brought up, they're not caused by debating. They're caused by human nature and how organizations work. And in some situations, if you're not careful, if you're not experienced enough as a leader, having too much of a debate mentality can aggravate these problems. But it's not like debate caused this thing. Debate is not Sauron. And the second point I want to make is, you mentioned something now and a few minutes ago about how are decisions made in a team, and everybody needs to know how decisions are made. And I think that's an absolutely crucial thing.
Yes.
I think the worst situation is when people in a team or a company, I say team in the very generic sense, it could be the whole company, if you're the CEO or your team or your department, when they don't know how decisions are made. That's very frustrating. Like, we talk about things, we argue about things, we say things, we present things, and the boss is like sitting there like mysteriously nodding left and right, and then a week later he or she decides something and we don't know why or how. I think a team needs to have a clear decision-making process. It doesn't even matter what it is. It can be a very traditional one, like, okay, you make proposals, we discuss, we debate to some point, then we brainstorm, whatever, but you do your thing, and at some point I pick something. It can be a very self-organizing one, like decentralized decision-making, as in, you guys can decide and you can do things. The only thing I ask you is to own it and don't go beyond certain parameters. It can be whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be clear. It has to be discussed. And everybody has to, okay, so in this team, this is how we make decisions. So if I want to change something, that's what I need to do. I need to convince the boss, or I need to just do it because I'm allowed to do it, or I need to convince him or her or whoever, right?
My point on this topic is that there is a problem on the way the decisions are taken, but I think the biggest problem is transparency. People want to see behind the curtain. They want to know if they are evaluated correctly and they are valued as a team member or not. They want to be part of the process sometimes. So I think first and foremost, exactly as you said, whatever the decision process it is, it should be transparent, and because people will understand then what's happening. So if you have a debate like conversation to take a decision, if you just everybody writes in one paragraph, you have a brainstorm or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's important to be transparent. And again, I think the fear of the lack of transparency comes from the fear of the leader to be able to present his ideas in front of the team. And they just present I taken the decision, I'm the boss, it's over. But if you would be a good public speaker and you would be able to present your arguments and be logical, you would be able to explain your process, whatever was that. Because sometimes you take decisions in one way and other decisions in another way, and it's not going to be the same system all the time, but you have to be able to explain to the team why you took that decision in such way at that point in time. So I totally agree, it's a problem.
I agree that bad leadership messes everything up, debates
Yeah.
or not.
So that's why I'm grateful for the job you do, because I'm sure you help a lot a lot of organizations to be better managed and have greater leaders. So I'm grateful for your work.
And I'm also grateful for your work, because I think there's a lot of a great need for people to be able to know how to find data,
Yeah.
analyze data, systemize data, understand the relative relevance of data,
Yeah.
present data and facts and options and solutions and proposals in a way that is clear and rational and concise. And I think there's a great need for that. So if I'm to summarize like everything
Please.
I said, I think debate is a great thing in terms of a skill, learning how to do all those things that I just mentioned, argumentation and rational conversation and all those things. No question. I would never have any concern about someone learning debate or doing a training in debate or argumentation. I would say that's an awesome thing. My concerns were back at work after the training, so to say. 2 or 3 concerns, which don't exclude the debate, but you have to make sure it doesn't do harm. The framing problem, in my experience, most decisions are not clear cut. It's not like we have a clear problem and we have a clear option 1 and option 2 or option 3 even. It's an emerging thing. It changes. There's ambiguity. There's uncertainty. It's not exactly clear what the problem is. And you want collaborative decision making. You want new ideas. You want out of the box ideas. You want a mixture of ideas. And if you frame the conversation too much like a debate, you limit that. That was one of the concerns. And the other concern was about this us versus them mentality, where people like to end up thinking that their team is the one doing their job well and no one else is doing their job well. And this lack of collaboration and politics and things like that can be exacerbated by, again, a debate-like mentality, in the sense that we have a problem, the big boss organized the meeting. What's my job at the meeting? Is to somehow explain why it's not my department's fault. If that's your mentality, that's a bad mentality. That's not the fault of debates. It's just, again, if you do too much of that debate-like conversation, it can encourage this. But I agree that if you use it well, if you're a good leader, if you understand these things, if you balance things, if you use other tools as well, I think this can be an awesome tool in your arsenal and your team's arsenal. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I'm also agreeing with all the points of view you are bringing to the discussion, because I understand that life is messy and business life is even messier from my point of view. So I understand that debate is not a one size fits all kind of solution. It's a nice tool to have in your toolbox. But indeed, leaders have to be thoughtful and have to pay attention to the way they approach things. And if an organization is already too competitive, I do not encourage them to take debate trainings unless they want to, use it in the teams that are clients facing or something like that, not for the internal use of the organization. But maybe there are organizations in which too many people are not assertive enough, not vocal enough, and maybe that would be a great way to engage them and make them be better employees and better team members. So I'm really grateful for the conversation. I was happy to talk about debate today, and thank you for the opportunity to do that.
It was a lovely conversation, and thank you for reacting to my video, because that triggered everything. And I'm really glad I met you. I'm really glad we talked about this. Maybe we'll talk again in the future. Who knows?
Hope so.
Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.